Catus Maximus here, this time with a quick kind of review, overview, and comparison of various construction tape measures. I only have Stanley Powerlocks really for automatic retracting tape measures, although this style tape measure, the compact encased automatic retracting metal tape measure, is one of the products that has the greatest amount of variety. As far as fiberglass and long reel type tape measures, there really are just two styles. There's open frame and closed frame. And eventually I'll build up a big collection of these tape measures and do another review. But I have Stanley Powerlocks just because I'm used to them. I have a lot of family in construction. Even my father put food on the table, and the Stanley Powerlock was part of what did that. Nowadays, there's going to be 100 different types of automatic retracting tape measures, and what's kind of nice about that really is that each person can find the tape measure and the style of markings that they like personally the best. And it's really a pretty big advantage, because versus somebody saying, well, the Powerlock's the best, or the way it's marked is simple and easy to read. Other people may like different styles, and the deal with the tape measure is you're trying to get the tool that gives you both quick and accurate results, and it's easy for you to work with. And that's the most important thing, is getting a good measurement. So really, even though I have Stanley's, I recommend you just look at a bunch of tape measures and just see how each style feels and how easy it is for you to pick up a specific measurement. We do have a nice little representation of some common quality brands. Of course, Stanley's. We do have a Harbor Freight fiberglass tape measure. We have a Komelon, which is a pretty nice brand, actually a really nice brand. And then we have a Keson, which is another competitive brand. We consider those professional grades. And then we have a couple of Lufkins. And the Lufkin Tape and Rule Company has been around for almost 150 years. They were bought out a long time ago, holy smokes, more than half a century ago, by Apex Tool, Cooper, the people who make Weller soldering irons and Nicholson files, etc. But Lufkins, for literally decades and decades and decades, were really considered some of the best tape measures you could really get. I also don't have represented here one of those fold-out wooden rules. I've had a few of those, and I've broken every single one of them. And every time I find one used, it's either really beat up or been left sitting in water, and so I don't have one of those here. Anyway, since we're speaking about Stanley Powerlocks, they come in a variety of lengths, and there's just a price difference. We have a 25-foot, a 30-foot, and I believe they also have a 35-foot. Besides the price difference, unless you really need to make those long measurements, you may not want to opt for a shorter tape measure just because it's lighter weight. You're not carrying around quite as much steel and mass, and it's actually significant. 5 feet of steel tape actually weighs quite a bit. But then again, it's always nice to have the option of making a longer measurement. One of the reasons I do like these Powerlocks, we have a nice new one here, and we have this one, which I actually partially ran over. It's been dropped a million times. Well, maybe not a million, but several times, and they've always worked out pretty well. They're not indestructible. There's certainly tape measures. Milwaukee has one that looks, really close to being indestructible, but a Stanley Powerlock is just something that you can rely on. You know it's going to work, and it's going to retract. What's really nice about Stanley Powerlocks is there's a property of these retractable tape measures, and that's called, I believe it's called extension length or hang length, and that's how far out that you can scroll the tape before it wants to collapse. And so on a Stanley, I don't even have space to do it here. We'll do it this way. On a Stanley, it's about 7 feet, or a little over 2 meters, which is actually pretty good. We can see that we're now past 7 feet, and you can't really see on camera. It's hard for me to kind of get the shot, and then eventually it will collapse. And so that's one way to test tape measures when you're pulling them out, to see how much extension. So even though this will do 7 feet, anywhere in the range of 5 to 6 feet, and it's going to be more enriched enough to be useful. But they always eventually break. They kink enough, particularly near the end when they're retracting, they'll kind of whip around and eventually fatigue the end of it off. Another property about measuring tapes that a lot of people don't realize is there's actually a reason. I've had people comment that they don't like how these hooks or these end clips move around on Stanley's and many other, or almost all tape measures, but there's a reason for that, because when you're pushing against something, it makes sure it's the front face is an accurate measurement, or when you're hooked on something, it moves about the thickness of the piece of metal and ensures accuracy when you're hooked onto something. So when you push against or are hooked on, it compensates essentially for the thickness of the metal. And of course, Stanley uses triple rivets, which is something to keep to look out for, and that's because when it retracts and hits, 2 rivets end up wallowing it out. There just isn't enough load relief. One other thing to mention about tape measures is you do want to be careful. It's generally not recommended just to let them wind up and retract at full speed, especially when you have a lot of extension, because they can whip around, and it is a thin piece of sheet metal. They do what they can to deburr the edge, but it's, you know, it's a piece of metal that's only 10 or 15 thousandths thick or something, and so it's real easy to have it whip around, catch one of your fingers, and it can give you a nasty cut. Stanley does have a variety of power locks. I forgot to mention, the reason I like them is just because when you're working with Imperial only, it's nice just to have a tape like this, which is just super simple, super quick, and super easy to read. Although your results may vary, and a lot of people like many different styles of markings. Stanley does have both metric and Imperial versions too, like this. The reason this isn't as good is because now they have 30 seconds tick marks, which can clutter the tape a little bit. But at the same token, you now have centimeters or metric measurement on the other side, so that can always be handy. Another aspect for construction is they often have stud spacing markings. There's a special diamond over 16 inches. If we go out to 32 inches, there'll be another diamond. And so that helps with general construction standards, at least in the United States, where you have 16-inch centers, which is progressing to 24-inch centers to make houses cheaper, basically. Wow, that was a whole lot of talk about those Stanley Powerlocks. They also have these, which are kind of cheesy. These have kind of broken on me, but these are just a metal tape, hand wound. It's just really long, 100 feet long. And what I do like about this is this only has 1/8-inch markings. But it is super simple and easy to read, and I do like the way when you retract it that the little hook has a little spot to sit in there, and that's actually always been a little bit of annoyance of all the kind of long tape measures, is that the hook is always dangling about and ends up getting beat up and broken. The Komelons are for surveying and open frame style are really some of the best. They do have a lot of friction, so I do recommend oiling them. One nice aspect is they have really well held in there. They have a stake so that you can hook it on, which is kind of nice that it's integrated straight into the unit itself. And then they have a variety of mounting options, such as a flip out claw or the little buckle that can go around anything, including its built-in stake. Has a nice rubberized housing, a couple rubberized bumpers. They're actually pretty decent. Now, the reason open frames are common, particularly in site preparation, etc., is they oftentimes get very dirty. And in enclosed reels, eventually the dirt tends to want to build up inside the case, where an open frame is pretty easy for obviously any heavy contamination, mud, etc., can just fall right out. Another interesting thing of the Komelon is they actually have the flip that out. They do have a nice big handle. The buckle actually reverses direction, which is kind of odd. Most of these wind clockwise, where this winds counterclockwise. But I think that's to help provide a little bit of extra tension, which is, hit or miss. And one final aspect out of all these is the Komelon is actually both imperial or fractional as well as metric. One side is metric and one side is imperial. Really nice, big, easy to read numbers. A nice heavy-duty reinforced end here for the end of the tape so it doesn't want to break off. And so that's another advantage of these, is you also get both styles, metric and standard, in one unit. Enough about that and those tape measures. Here's a more traditional style. These are the enclosed reels, so they wouldn't be quite as optimal in really very dirty environments, but they still work just great. They can be a little awkward to hold sometimes because they don't have a strap. Most of them don't have a strap, but they are easy to unfurl. This one is only Imperial only. But this is a Keson, and it's another professional brand that would be along the lines of the Komelon. Here's Harbor Freight one, surprisingly enough, and I did like some of the things they did. One is they put a little hand handle on the back, and I thought that's actually genius. Why haven't a lot of other manufacturers done that? The second thing I'll recommend about the Harbor Freight is however they have it set up. This plastic doesn't seem that durable. It seems like it would actually break pretty easily, but it certainly runs very smoothly. It's really just pretty amazing. If I just jerk the tape, you can see how that wants to spin around really easily. This also is metric on one side and fractional on the other, which I do appreciate. And because it's so smooth running, it's really fast to wind back up. And to tell you the truth, as far as how a fiberglass tape operates, this seems to be pretty good. You know, they have a reinforcer at the end of the tape, although it may not be quite as good as what's on the Komelon. It's still respectable, to tell you the truth. It does have a plastic end, so that may want to break off on you. The last couple of ones that we have are just a couple of unique ones I wanted to show people and show how they made some of the ideas. This is a very old Lufkin. I'm sure this is over half a century old. It may be 70 years old or even more. But it's pretty unique in the fact, and it needs to be cleaned up. But I did want to show this one, is this is one aspect where they made it inverted, so that it's a steel tape which is blackened and then all the numbers are silvered. And it's really interesting how they did it because, and I don't think you can, maybe you can just pick up on the camera, it looks like those numbers are kind of stuck on there. You can just see a touch of a lip. So the numbers are actually raised. So there'll be something I can do to clean it up and get the numbers shining. But it's like they applied some type of mask and then used an acid to etch away the steel a little bit, which also left it black, and then they got rid of the mask. But I thought that was always interesting because I've never seen any tape like it that was inverted black and white. Now, one thing people don't like about the steel tapes is they get pretty easy for them to get tangled, kinked, easily damaged, fatigued, and that's why fiberglass took over. It's just so much more durable. Although there's some arguments about how the way it flexes around so much that you really have to put a lot of tension on it to make sure you're getting an accurate measurement, where steel tapes don't really like to stretch or compress and they lay a little straighter. And finally, one of my favorite measuring tapes, and I wish these were a little more common. I understand why they're not. This is a cloth, or I don't know if it's cotton. I'm not exactly sure what material it is. But as far as, you know, using it on a job site, because it's cloth, it can get damaged. It really likes to pick up dirt really well, and so I could assume that they would get just so dirty they would become unusable. But the numbers are giant on this, and I really appreciate that. They're just the full height of the tape. Very easy. The nice thing, even though this is a steel case, it's still very lightweight. This is the lightest weight 100-foot tape measure I've ever encountered. And there's a third real distinct advantage to the cloth which I found versus the steel or even fiberglass. We can go ahead, and I do want to do this example, we can just unfurl a huge amount of it just randomly. This is not something you would get away with steel tape, and a fiberglass tape would get tangled. There, we just pulled out 25 feet of this tape. It's just in a tangle right here. Just, you know, you can just pick it up and do that. And this is what's kind of amazing about the cloth tapes, is they just sort themselves out. That is just in one pile. I picked it up in a big pile, and it just magically sorts itself out. And it's the easiest tape measure I've ever encountered to wind up. Nothing even comes close to how easy that was. It was 25 feet of tape just in a pile, and it wound up just like it was sitting in a straight line. Anyway, that's the end of this long talk about measuring tapes. I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. Please do subscribe to the Catus Maximus channel. And until next video, see you soon.